Eugene stood in the middle of a luxurious room, surrounded by shelves filled with nothing but books. Since arriving to such a strange, well-hidden place, Eugene had noticed that everyone he has encountered has simply stared at him without so much as uttering a syllable. The carpet was a dark red that matched the velvet of the bookshelves, and Eugene frowned at a peculiar book that rested on a nearby coffee table. He slowly stepped towards the table and reached for the book, somehow compelled to open it and reveal its contents. The binding was in great shape, but the book still seemed old, and Eugene found himself staring at the cover longer than he had anticipated. "The book is an account of every world I have visited." A charming voice spoke, and Eugene blinked, quickly searching the room for whoever it was. "Who was that?" Eugene asked in a panic. "Show yourself!" "I assure you," the voice continued as a man began to materialize out of thin air before the younger man, "you have no need to worry or be on guard while under this roof. You are amongst friends here." The man had an odd voice, but his appearance was even stranger. He was wearing a long, blood-red robe lined with silver stitching, and his long hair was combed back and seemed to be made of silk. He smiled at Eugene before gesturing towards himself with both hands. "I'm sorry to intrude in such a way," he said honestly, his voice warm and inviting. "I'm sure this is all awkward, to say the least." "Who are you?" Eugene asked suspiciously while narrowing his eyes. "I am Isaac," the man answered almost immediately. "Isaac Leaves. It is nice to finally meet you, Eugene." Eugene looked away from the man, unsure of what to make of him. He turned back to the book and opened it so that he could study the contents. He frowned as he skipped through the pages and sifted through the words. "Do you really believe in other worlds? Of those you dream of?" he asked Isaac in a curious tone before adding, "I dream of them constantly." The older man laughed. "I will remind you, my friend, I stated that book was an account of the worlds I have visited, not just merely glanced into. I'm afraid that gift escapes me." "You've been to other worlds?" Eugene asked with a pair of wide eyes. "I'm sorry, but I just cannot believe that." Isaac chirped. "There's little need for belief when you have walked on the surfaces of over 100 different Earths." Isaac raised an eyebrow as he read into Eugene's mind and heard the young man thinking, "This man is insane." "I must assure you, Eugene, that I am quite sane, contrary to popular belief." "What?" Eugene exclaimed, and Isaac's laughter only continued. "Dreamers, my boy, aren't the only kind of psychics in this world, or the others," Isaac replied, "although they are the most common. No, what I am is incredibly rare, and that's putting it quite mildly. I am a psychic possessing 4 abilities in total, so far the only of my kind." This is when Isaac's feet left the floor, and he began to slowly hover upwards into the air, near the ceiling. He then smiled and reached outwards with his left hand, and the book left Eugene's grasp. It flew through the air until Isaac caught it, and Eugene was stunned. "I can also move most objects, including myself," Isaac explained to him. Eugene was beginning to shake in both fear and disbelief as Isaac's feet touched the floor once more and began to approach him. Eugene backed away when Isaac raised his hand again and pointed 2 fingers towards Eugene's forehead. What are you doing?" Eugene stammered, and Isaac did not stop. "Freeing you," was all Isaac said as his 2 fingertips graced Eugene's skull, and the world around him seemed to melt away. The setting quickly reformed itself like putty, and Eugene found himself in the midst of a ruined city. There were wildfires raging throughout the fallen buildings, and rubble was scattered as far as the eye could see. There were long, rusted cars, trucks, and emergency personnel vehicles with the skeletons of those who once drove them. Eugene looked on in horror, while the atmosphere above him was the darkest shade of orange possible, with a complete absence of clouds. His fingertips vibrated with anxiety as he fell to one knee. He could feel the highly polluted air entering his lungs and poisoning him. His face twitched, and he strained against the environment. "It is all right," a familiar voice said behind him, and the air was beginning to thin itself of all toxins. A few moments later, Eugene could breathe freely, and he rose to his feet once more. "What the hell is this place?" he asked while turning to see Isaac. The man had both hands cupped together in front of him, and his face was dressed with a warm smile. "This is an alternate reality, Eugene," Isaac said softly. "Another Earth, to be more precise. They all start out the same, but at any given point in their timeline, they diverge. These differences can often be too small to recognize, and on others, such as this one, they are obvious. This Earth was destroyed several decades ago, a war that took no one prisoner." "You fixed the air," Eugene noted, and Isaac nodded. "I did, yes." "Is cleaning the air another one of your abilities?" Isaac laughed. "Heavens, no! I simply used my psychic ability to move things and removed the radiation from the little bit of oxygen that still remains." Eugene frowned. "Radiation? So there was a nuclear war?" Isaac shrugged. "Yes and no. I lived here for many years before having to relocate to yet another Earth. There were nuclear weapons in play, but they were not the cause." "What happened?" Isaac observed the landscape around him and sighed. "A war among psychics took place here. Such a conflict makes a nuclear holocaust reflect child's play." Eugene gulped as he tried to comprehend such a fight and what could cause it. He thought back to the nightmarish worlds he had dreamed of and considered what he had suspected for a while now, that these worlds were in fact real. "I tried to stop it," Isaac said while bowing his head. "There were too many differing sides with reasons to hate or fear one another. When their tension imploded, the entire planet paid the heaviest price. Once I left this Earth, I made it my mission to frequently visit as many as possible and unite most, if not all, of the psychics who lived there. I do this so that what happened here can never repeat itself, before any evil can taint their hearts and lead them to annihilation. On every world, I call these groups the Chosen, because they, unlike any other creature, are born for a purpose. Often enough, these groups consist of the same people on each Earth, just alternate versions of them, all fighting for the same cause." "What's the cause?" Eugene asked, and he finally noticed the sky. "To protect their worlds." Something occurred to Eugene that he hadn't thought of in a while. His eyebrows shrank and his forehead creased as a name ran through his brain. "Where is Autumn in all of this?" he asked the older psychic. "In fact, where is she physically, right now?" Isaac chuckled and even placed an open palm on his belly. "To answer that question is too complex for you to fully grasp in this moment of time," he told Eugene. "But she exists on a multitude of worlds in a hive mind of herself." "Oh, what?" Eugene had a confused look on his face. "What does that even mean?" "You will learn," Isaac assured him. "Now you have seen it for yourself. The multiverse is real, and it is in danger. How many dying worlds have you dreamed of?" "Too many," Eugene sadly replied, and Isaac nodded. "There is great evil working towards the destruction of all worlds and the universes in which they reside." Isaac spoke with a grim tone and an expression to match. Eugene liked him more when he was smiling. When he wasn't, Isaac resembled a broken man at a funeral. "I've been to many, many Earths, Eugene," Isaac continued. "I'm older than I look as well. I'm just over 10,000 years old. I was born when mankind was nomadic and barbaric. Of course, some saw me as a sort of god due to my abilities. Others saw me as a monster, a demon. Eventually, I was forced from my people and into the wild, where I survived on my own. If I weren't a psychic, I would have surely perished in such a harsh time to be alive. It was because of people like us, because of psychics, that the human race evolved at an accelerated rate." "So you were the first psychic," Eugene guessed, but Isaac shook his head. "No, I was not the first, though to date I am the most powerful. In the beginning I took on a pupil, a cousin of mine. But long ago, he betrayed me and sided with the greatest threat to the multiverse." Your cousin?" Eugene repeated questioningly. Isaac nodded. "Indeed. You've actually met him quite recently. He was the very same man that attacked you in the parking lot. He goes by the name Evan now."